a business is 2% innovation, 98% execution. And that's true. I mean, it's absolutely true. You'll find it over and over again. I mean, even the businesses that the applications and the services that we use today that are multi-billion-dollar companies weren't necessarily the most innovative. They just did a spectacular job at execution.
Welcome to Barbell Business. I'm Mike Bletzer here with Doug Larson and Marcus Gursey, and we are up in Newport Beach. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Next to the pier.
I get confused. I just drive up the coast and get confused.
Newport Beach.
Yeah. And we're hanging out with Mike Melby. He's a venture capitalist in the fitness market. So probably somebody we don't run into very often. Most gym owners.
It's a rare breed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, you're looking at me funny.
I always look at you funny. Look at you.
Yeah. How could you not?
Yeah. Mike, thank you for having us, man. Good to be here.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming up my way.
You bet. We got connected through Brian McKenzie. You guys are doing some stuff together?
We are. Brian's the man. So I'm excited about the next chapter with him and some of the crazy stuff we're going to be building together. So
yeah. Very cool. Tell us about yourself. How'd you get into this space?
Yeah. So you're here at my home from Newport Beach, and this is a very active environment. So I've been, I think I've really been an enthusiast of health and fitness since I was probably 14 or 15 years old. I used to get kicked out of chemistry class for reading Flex magazine in the middle of a lecture.
Who didn't?
And right. But I've been a competitive martial artist since I was 5 years old. So I started in karate in 1986. I won the worlds 3 years in a row. Went into boxing when I was 14, boxed competitively for 8 years, and then started jiu-jitsu in 1998. Originally with Carlson Gracie, back when he was here with us, and been with Gracie Baja for the last 7 years or so. My wife is Caroline Gracie, who's the daughter of Carlos Gracie Jr. So martial arts and jiu-jitsu have been really at the center, the nucleus of my life for 30 years now. That's really what everything's evolved around. So, even kind of professionally, I always felt like I was sort of doing things that weren't really in line with who I was as a person, being kind of a stodgy finance guy and working the 120-hour weeks in investment banking out of college and all that. And, things kind of shook out, and I was able to bring things full circle and come back to applying, the finance, tech, and entrepreneurship experience focused exclusively on fitness and human performance now. So I always used to joke and say that if I could be anything, I'd be a professional surfer, but frankly I'd rather be doing what I'm doing right now. So.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Dope. You were telling us earlier you thought you were going to be a hacker when you grew up.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was. I think when I was 13, 14, I was kind of a wannabe hacker, and then that turned into being a legitimate one. I used to I was in the kind of deep realms of the internet back when people weren't even really using the internet, and was dialing into bulletin board systems. And I did a lot of hardware hacking. I learned how to code in C and assembly, which are sort of the lowest level languages other than machine code, and put together a lot of devices, that allowed me to not have to pay for phone calls at payphones and things like that. And
Nice.
So I went to Berkeley for undergrad thinking that that's pretty much what I was going to be doing, and ended up getting turned on to economics and finance instead, and went into investment banking after school. So.
Mm-hmm. And then related to the gym space, you helped scale 24-hour fitness and UFC gyms in some capacity?
Yeah, I did. So not 24-hour fitness, although I worked essentially with the team very closely. I mean, almost as close as family with the team that did build 24-hour fitness. UFC gym, yes. So I, after the kind of, 6 or so years in investment banking and private equity, and then after business school, I started and sold a couple tech companies in payment tech and ad tech. Ended up going, just lucked out, timing worked out, and everything in this game is timing. got the opportunity to work with Mark Mastrov, who founded 24 Hour Fitness. And Mark is I call him the Steve Jobs of the fitness industry. I've heard him referred to as the Babe Ruth of fitness. But he's the man. The guy started as a personal trainer in 1983 at a single unit gym called 24 Hour Nautilus. Bought into it with the then owner Leonard Schlemm, who's also the man, and they scaled it into a $1.7 billion business, sold it in 2005. And when he departed 24 in 2008, he founded his New Evolution Ventures, which is known as NEV, really his personal holding company that operates like a private equity firm. So I got the opportunity to work with him and Brent Leffel and Jim Rowley and Mike Feeney and the rest of the team, the NEV partners. That was a dream for me. I mean, when I landed there, about a month into it, I realized that I was going to dedicate the rest of my career and the rest of my life to the fitness industry, and that I had landed in the right place with the team that had really built the industry. I mean, turned the industry into what it was. I'd say I was involved in the execution of more fitness deals than anybody in the world over the last several years. Not necessarily with me as the lead, but as kind of the right hand of the partners of Brent Leffel, Mark, and Jim. UFC Gym was kind of a gem for us. I mean, it was something that Mark started from scratch, sitting across the table from Lorenzo Fertitta in 2008 over like a dinner conversation, and it turned into the concept of UFC Gym. So in 2009, the first gym was put on the ground. When I joined about 4 years ago, there were 6 locations open, and they had just acquired the LA boxing franchise. When I kind of transitioned to found FitLab, my VC fund, we had about 150 locations open and a pipeline of about 250 to be open. So a lot of progress there, a lot of resources, a lot of hard work, and it was a grind, but an awesome one. And I think the learnings that I and the rest of the team got from that are things that we will carry with us for the rest of our career, and I think really put us in an advantageous position as we look to build amazing things on a go-forward basis. So,
Yeah, we're in a really extremely beneficial point right now standing here with you, because you have all this experience. Like most people that are listening to the show, I imagine, are trying to open up one gym, and you've been involved in opening hundreds. And not only that, you've had experience on the finance side, dealing with leases and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I have a ton of questions around that, but just to start off, I think one of the biggest questions people have is, how do you manage the equity split? When I watch gym owners, they go, "Oh, I want to open a gym," and you know what? Doug, Marcus, and I, we're going to open up a gym. Let's just go thirds, and then figure out what we're even going to do afterwards. Like, I don't even know whose job is whose at that point. But that's a very common thing to happen. What do you think about that, and how do you approach it?
Yeah, it's a critical question, and frankly, there is no right formula. There are only suggestions and frameworks that you could, abide by or consider following. But so I'd say, we can come back to the gym stuff, but I've been a co-founder of probably half a dozen businesses. A couple of them have been sold, and the rest are essentially still in existence or new, where they're kind of just getting up and running. And they've been at various levels, where it's me and a buddy, or it's me and a tier 1 athlete. And so each situation is different. I would say that you'll hear it a lot. Ideas are cheap, and it all comes down to execution. So, people they think because they had the idea that they get 50% of the business or whatever it may be, or 90%, and then it kind of scales down from there. And it's really the opposite. I mean, I feel bad that I don't recall who it was that I just read this from, but it was a well-known VC, and I read it yesterday, and he mentioned the 298 rule, which was that a business is 2% innovation, 98% execution. And that's true. I mean, it's absolutely true. You'll find it over and over again. I mean, even the businesses that the applications and the services that we use today that are multi-billion-dollar companies weren't necessarily the most innovative. They just did a spectacular job at execution. I mean, Uber's the one that comes to mind. There's not a whole lot of complexity on the front end of Uber. I mean, you open it and you push a button, right? And you get picked up and dropped off at your destination. On the back end, there's a lot more complexity there in the logistics and the pricing and the management of the workforce and everything else. But I wouldn't say that was a highly innovative idea. I mean, it was refreshing taxi service, but executing it in a way that the taxi industry never did. And so I think that there needs to be a lot of understanding of the importance of execution. I also think in general, just people, tend to overvalue their own contribution. People always feel kind of underpaid and undervalued. And so I don't think that people should sort of change their self-awareness. I mean, they should be self-aware, but they shouldn't necessarily change their perspective on what their value is. But they do need to give a lot more credit to the person standing next to them and what he or she may bring to the table, and understand that building a business by yourself is extremely difficult.
In my experience, I've noticed that a lot of gym owners give away more equity than they should.
Yeah.
And someone's opening a gym and someone gives them $30,000 and they give them half of the equity for putting in $30,000 when they're the ones running the daily operations. You were talking about most of it's in the execution. What about the execution versus the funding?
Yeah, and that also comes down to what type of business is it. I mean, if you are looking to operate one gym for the rest of your life, maybe a couple, that it's a different proposition than if you are pitching a globally scaled, media-enabled fitness platform that's impacting millions of lives. Okay, so if you are opening XYZ Pilates studio in Costa Mesa, California, and you don't really have vision beyond that one location, I do think that's a situation where you probably give up more of the business on a check like that, just based on the value proposition. I mean, everything comes down to net present value. So if you the art of raising money and valuing a company is an art. I guess it's a science ultimately, because you're managing your dilution and what you're going to own at the end of the day and how much you want to get paid if you ever sell the business. But it may not be a business that's sellable. It may just be a cash flow generating business. So you have to kind of take all these factors into account. But look, if we said, hey, we're going to go start CrossFit 2.0 right now, or CrossFit 3.0, and the group of us here are co-founders, and this is going to have 1,000 locations worldwide, and it's going to be a mix of corporate stores and franchises, and we're going to need to raise $50 million to actually get this done. It's going to take us 10 years. Yeah, if we take a $30,000 check, you're probably getting 0.5% of our company. If this is, myself setting up a jiu-jitsu academy down the street that's not under a particular brand, and it's Melby Jiu-Jitsu, which probably wouldn't do very well, and I raised $30,000, I'd probably have to give up a third of the business, and it probably warrants doing so. I sort of, again, I think it's situational. I always say I don't like to be a pig on equity, so I'm actually a big proponent of giving away equity to the workers, to the people that are part of the founding team who are actually getting in there and scrapping with me. On the investors, I think, look, if you don't get your investors a reasonable return, shame on you as an entrepreneur, as a fiduciary of their money. But at the same time, absolutely do not give up more than you should. I mean, it comes down, if you shouldn't start a business in general without modeling it out in a friggin' spreadsheet. Okay, so, and if you don't know how to do it, you got to get help.
Should have talked to you my first time.
Well, I mean, the only thing that we can also guarantee you is that whatever that spreadsheet says is not going to come true. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't still do the planning anyway. And if you model it out, and it shows that in order to give your investor a 30% internal rate of return, assuming that they're holding it for 7 years and you're not going to get them a return on their investment for 7 years, that you got to get them kind of in the 20%, 30% range for, what's considered a mid-risk or high-risk investment. So whatever that comes out to, it's hard to even say whether that's half of the business or 10% of the business. You can't even assess that without seeing what those numbers are and what the potential of that location or that platform is. So, but I just to kind of wrap it up, I'd say there is no formula, but I think that whoever's idea it was gets nothing for that. Maybe a couple extra points. That's kind of just a soft rule, but I think
you said they don't get extra for having the idea.
Don't get extra for having the idea.
If they're helping execute, then they're getting equity for the execution.
Absolutely. I mean, it all comes down to. I mean, if you're both full time, if you and I are going to start a business tomorrow, if I had a cool idea for biomarker analysis and getting it into gyms, and we're going to start it tomorrow, is my idea, but I'm going to run strategy and finance, and you're going to run sales and marketing, and we're going to need to find somebody to run ops. There's no reason why I should get more unless I'm bringing considerably more resources to it. Because if you're bleeding and sweating every single day, just like I am, neither of us are taking much comp out of the company. And, we should be pretty close to pari passu. Having said that, if I'm the industry guy, I have all the resources, I can get the capital, I can make all the connections, all that. And you're, just kind of a grinder that I brought in, that's a little different. I mean, maybe that's a, 70-30, 60-40 split, something like that. But again, I mean, there are no rules. It comes down to every constituent involved believing that they got a fair and reasonable shake. And if somebody, I was told by a really good entrepreneur, Ryan Caldwell, who's the CEO of a financial tech company in Utah, he put a bid on a company that I ran, several years ago. And when I was trying to negotiate with him, he said, look, Mike, I only believe in fair and reasonable deals. I don't believe in good deals. In a good deal, somebody gets effed. And I'm not going to be that guy, and I'm not going to let you be that guy. So we're going to figure out a fair and reasonable deal here, or we're not going to have a deal. And that's what it comes down to in a co-founding, equity setup as well. If everybody, everybody always wants more, but if you don't feel good about what you have, or you don't feel that it's fair and reasonable, then something needs to be fixed, or somebody needs to not be involved.
Yeah.
In that case, is it just likely to fall apart? Like if you're looking to have a deal that lasts for decades potentially, like if it's not equal on all sides, if there's some person in the deal that doesn't feel like they got a fair shake, then it's going to fall apart in a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It will fall apart. It's a guarantee. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a case study where the deal was uneven and the partners stuck it out for the duration of the company. So it's also not about just equity splits. It's about vesting. It's about milestones. It's about having operational responsibilities. And if that individual is not satisfactorily or excellently meeting their responsibilities, then there's some sort of ratchet. And that's a not awesome situation to be in either, when you have to kind of sit down with one of your co-founders and be like, look, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, even though that was part of the deal, so we need to adjust this equity scenario. Unfortunately, that's what has to happen, but man, that sucks. It really sucks. So I think that there's also an art in balancing the detail and sort of simplicity of the arrangement, because if you get too detailed and say you got to do this, nobody's going to end up doing all that. You can't predict that. Everything changes day to day in entrepreneurial operations. So you put a general framework in place. There has to be a certain level of trust. There has to be a certain level of accommodation. And again, to me, it's about whether or not you feel good about what you have. I always tell entrepreneurs, don't look at things from a parity perspective. Don't say, oh, he's got more than me, or he shouldn't have as much. It's not about what he or she has. It's about what you have and whether or not you feel good about it. If you have enough and you're incentivized to continue charging ahead, everything's good. Stop freaking worrying about what the other individual has. If they're happy, they're sticking around. If you're happy, you're sticking around. Don't worry about the 60-40, 70-30, I deserve more. It's not about that.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's take a break real quick, and we'll come back. I want to talk about leasing, finding a building, and what all should entail in that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
We bought into a gym that was declining, really, to be honest with you. The lights were on, classes were running, but that was about all that was going on. What I was struggling with most at the time was there were 1,000 things that needed to be done, and I didn't know where to start. We were struggling with kind of getting oriented and what are the most important things to be working on. So it was really helpful to we needed someone to come in and help us put a plan together and figure out priorities.
We had so much low-hanging fruit to be able to fix the business, but we didn't know where to start or how to prioritize.
We had just started with the calls immediately. I felt listened to and I felt heard pretty quickly. Angelo really met us where we were at the time, and helped us, get rolling in the right direction. So it was productive very quickly. It was a really warm, caring relationship. Within the first call, we had tasks to do and things to get organized with over the next month. So it forced us to pretty quickly take action. I didn't want to show up at the next call and say that we hadn't done what we had said to do, or that we weren't getting things accomplished. So it really helped us figure out priorities quickly and get organized much more quickly than we would have done on our own.
We were able to get some processes put in place, and we were able to get the ball rolling that we didn't seem so overwhelmed.
We have doubled revenue, doubled membership, and that's been huge. I think we've also made some huge gains in our community and how things feel to our members, being able to offer the right kinds of things. This affected the business by, I believe, giving me and my business partners a lot more confidence in that we're working on the right kinds of things at the right time. We have found our own roles and our own lanes to be working in, so it just makes us much more productive overall. Well, I feel like for you, you were the gym, so everything was on your shoulders, and I think it took you a little bit to unwind some of that you didn't realize you didn't have to do.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I got more freedom, more me time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Where we are now, what the future holds for our business is we're right about to open a brand new space that will double the size of our gym. We'll also elevate our brand. It's going to be a higher end CrossFit gym, which is pretty exciting. And we're working well as business partners together because we each know our own area and what we need to be doing. And not only do we know what we're doing, but we know where we're going. We have a 5-year plan, and so we know where we're headed, and it really helps keep momentum. It helps make decisions on a daily basis, and I think the future is super bright for us, and that's really exciting. If you're considering working with a Barbell business coach, do it. The accountability is valuable. The planning is valuable. This can be a hard path, and you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We've made mistakes even working with a coach, but to have someone there who's done this before, who's been through it, who can help point you in the right direction and maybe help steer your learning, I think will help you grow in just bigger ways, play bigger with the business, with your goals, what you're really wanting in your life. So I absolutely recommend working with a Barbell business coach.
We're back with Mike Melby, and we're going to talk about leasing, but I think we found a more interesting topic first.
About raising capital?
Raising capital.
Yeah. A lot of gyms start with almost no money in the bank, and they have to get members right away. And if they haven't done any pre-sales, then the first couple months they have almost no gym members. They don't have any money, and they're struggling before they've even gotten off the ground. So, in your mind, how much money do you need going into a venture? Which I'm sure that'll vary depending on the venture, but how much money do you need to have in the bank, and how do you get access to that capital?
Sure.
And just anything in that world.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Mark Pincus, the founder of Zynga, said at a dinner I was at a couple years ago, overfund and overpay. And I agree with him. I'm not a big fan of underpaying staff and expecting them to sweat it out. The productivity you get out of an employee or a team member who is adequately or even above adequately paid is I think exponential. And then on the funding side, it's raise much more than you think. Take capital. You hear these stories, maybe by watching the show Silicon Valley that I took too much money. It doesn't exist in this world. I mean, in that world, yes, that can happen. If you have a institutional venture capital firm come in and give you $50 million when you only needed 10, there's all these complexities and explanations as to why taking too much capital in that scenario is a detriment, and it has to do with your ability to sell the company and their ability to block you from selling. But when you're talking about a more kind of modest scale local business, man, if you think it's gonna, if you're again, you got to model things out. Okay, so what's your equipment spend? What's your construction spend? Are you getting any TI kickback from the landlord? If you're not, do a better job in negotiating with the landlord, and have a reserve for working capital. And I would say 6 months. You got to have 6 months. You got to assume that you're losing money for 6 months. Having said that, if any gym owner out there is not running pre-sale, they're making the first mistake in opening a gym. Like that's the secret to 24-hour fitness and NEV, Mark Masterov, Jim Rowley's success in gyms is pre-sale. Yep. If you're building a 40,000 square foot gym, you're under construction for 5-6 months. You have 5 to 6 months to sell memberships, and you're blowing it every day that you don't have a pre-sale tent set up or pre-sale location set up. If you have a 10,000 square foot gym, you're in construction 2 to 3 months. It's 2 to 3 months of member sales. Like, and you don't have to give much of a discount in pre-sale. Like, it's amazing how people rush to buy a membership even though a gym's not open yet. There's other incentives you can put in place to incentivize people to do that. If it's a boxing fitness studio, give them a free pair of gloves that may retail for $80, but it actually costs you $12. Give them a free set of hand wraps. Give them a T-shirt and a hat so they can walk around proud that they're a member of this new gym. But run pre-sale. I mean, that's gym bootstrapping 101. Okay, so every dollar in matters. I think depending on your concept, you can look at sponsors. You can do a lot of things. You can get municipal grants, things like that to provide more financial wherewithal. But yeah, I mean, I'd say. Whatever you think the total cost is going to be for your gym build out, raise an additional 50%.
Yeah, I've always found that everything's more expensive and takes way more time.
Yeah, I mean they say the rule is 2 to 3 times as long and 2 to 3 times more expensive.
Yep.
And I'd say it's more like three or more. Yeah. So it's just unpredictable stuff, man. And with a gym, you have permitting, and it's probably one of the most complex businesses I've ever been involved with from the perspective of managing staff. You have the same. It's maybe not the same level of customer service that you have to provide with a hotel, but not that far off. I mean, I think gym members don't get treated spectacularly in general, and because that's kind of the status quo. And they do at Equinox and they do at Lifetime Fitness, but maybe not at whatever gym is down the street. But all those locations have in common is management of staff. The type of people that are in this industry are fairly introspective people. They are, I don't want to use the word self-absorbed because that sounds negative, but they're just very into self-cultivation. And so being the star personal trainer is a very important thing for your personal trainers. They don't just want a job. They want to be the best personal trainer on staff. Your GM is so critical to your gym. And if you lose a GM or your GM has a family problem or a health issue or whatever, everything can fall apart. I mean, it takes that GM can be gone, and 2 weeks later, your membership sales are down. You just had a bunch of members attrit, and you had a higher churn this month than you expected, and next month you're losing money. And when you run a single location gym that, let's say, is doing $300,000 to $600,000 a year in revenue or something like that, you can go from making $10,000 a month to losing $10,000 a month, and there's a huge difference between making $10,000 a month and losing $10,000 a month. Like
I believe it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, but it sounds like it's manageable. It's not.
No, we see it all the time.
It's managing a gym to break even is sketchy business because it can quickly flip one way, and all of a sudden, you're out 30, 40, 50 grand, and as a sole proprietorship, as one individual owning a gym, that's directly out of your pocket. So make sure you have working capital reserve. Always be raising money, frankly. I mean, even if you have a single location, never stop raising money. Like, just raise, and until you're flush with cash, raise money.
So for those gyms that have now been, up and running a few years, they've built something pretty solid, and they're looking to grow and expand. How do they go about now continuing to, or maybe for the first time, bringing in any external capital?
Yeah, sure. So I think first off, it depends on the priorities and kind of where they're looking to scale. I will say that there's something awesome about owning a local market and having 4 or 5 locations and just being the best in your area. Fitness is a very localized thing. I worked on an acquisition of a company in Gold Coast, Australia, one of the best gym chains I've ever been involved with. They only had 4 locations. They were opening a 5th. But they owned fitness. I mean, it was the best gym chain. They were larger locations. They were 30,000 square foot locations. But it was the best fitness chain in the Gold Coast, in the greater Brisbane area. And we, they wanted to partner with us and scale and, sweep Australia. And I asked them, over and over and over again, not to unsell them on working with us, but are you sure you guys want to do this? First and foremost, like, you have great lives right now. You have 4 locations that are each kicking off $1 million in profit a year. There's three co-owners of this platform. You guys, you have to, keep a pulse of this thing on a day-to-day basis every day, but you control your daily destiny. You have a great brand and a great market. It's your ecosystem's tight. It's manageable. You don't have to jump on a plane to go anywhere. And you have great families and great wealth, and everything's good. Are you sure you want more?
What are you looking for?
Like what else do you want? It's usually it's either, and it wasn't the case with these guys. They were some of the smartest operators I've ever dealt with. But it's often the case of ego that people want to expand,
level up,
and look, that's okay. I mean, we all are. We're all overwhelmed with our own ego, but that's part of what drives ambition and progress and in society in general. So I think, first of all, make sure you want to do that. Make sure you really want to change your life. It's going to change your life. Sometimes for the better, often for the worse. But it just depends. If accomplishment and impacting lives is what's important to you, then put the pedal to the metal and scale. So if you decide you want to do that, then determine how you want to do it. If you have the ability to raise lots of money and you don't mind the headache of directly overseeing the operations of brick and mortar stores, keep opening corporate stores. If you have, I'd say an 85% confidence interval that you have a particular location, and if you open a 6th store, it's gonna succeed, kind of 85% confidence, and you're gonna get a less than 4-year payback on the capital that you put in to that location, open the gym all day. But once you get to 4 or 5, every additional one is not, 12%, 15%, 17% more work. It's like 100% more work. Because of what the resources and infrastructure you have in place may only match the scale requirement of 4 to 5 gyms. And it's not linear. So, from what I've seen is, talking kind of further out, a gym location like up to 10 locations, or you can pretty much open 10 at like this level of infrastructure. Then once you want to break past 10, it doesn't go like this. It steps up, and you have to hire 8 more people on the corporate side, and then you have to hire 2 divisional kind of GMs that oversee multiple GMs, and that's what you have to do to break past 10. Then you get to 30, then you get to 50, and then you kind of have to keep doing this step up as you get to 100. Once you get to 100, then it's like a 5x overhead step up. It's just crazy how that happens. And at that point, you're probably looking to go international and everything else. But so, if you're comfortable with the headache, and you're comfortable with the operations, and you have capital availability, just keep opening corporate stores would be my recommendation. If you don't want to do that, but you think that you have a unique and compelling concept and a strong brand that would be well received in other markets, both domestically and internationally, as well as from a franchisee perspective, I'm a big fan of franchising. I know entrepreneurs, somebody, I worked with who founded a boxing fitness chain that we acquired and rebranded. He went off to buy into another chain in the Pilates space that had, about a third of its stores in corporate owned, and the rest were franchised. First thing he did was sold off the corporate owned stores as franchises, And, since then, I think has sold over 300 units and has 100 stores open now. So, and he did that in a couple of years. And he's an amazing entrepreneur, both smart and clever. And it's just, for him, he would rather focus on supporting franchisee operations as opposed to running his own stores. And there's no right or wrong answer to that as well. It's whether or not, he wants to put capital to work in that. He has plenty, so he could have. But it's just from his perspective, what he does best is sells franchises and supports franchisees to be successful. So, that's a key thing to consider as well. Do you want to keep opening stores and run those stores, or do you want to empower other entrepreneurs to be a part of your system, leverage their capital, do things on an asset-light basis? I mean, you're essentially raising capital that way, right? You can either raise capital into your own company, dilute your own equity, and build your own stores, but you do get more cash flow because you get the direct cash flow of the store. Or do you want to do things asset-light, leverage other people's capital, empower them to be business owners, and then take a 5%, 6%, maybe 7% royalty off what they generate. And just one thing to point out on that with respect to royalty, people think that, like, as an entrepreneur, you think somebody's going to take 5% of my top line. It sounds like a lot, but then on the other side, when you're the franchisor, 5% doesn't sound like much, but it's actually about a fourth of the business, right? Because if the average healthy, successful business does a 20% EBITDA cash flow margin on its revenue, you're actually getting 5 points of the 20 points. So you actually own a fourth of their business. So 5% royalty is a significant royalty, and most are in the 5-6% range. But anyways, so I think it comes down to individualistic basis, what you're looking to do as a person, being happy. Having a good lifestyle is going to drive whether or not you're a high performer on a day-to-day basis. And if you dive into a business scenario that just really isn't suited for who you are as a person, for your financial resources, and for your ability to endure operational headache, it's going to get complex. So just be thoughtful about it. Don't rush into anything, for sure.
Yeah, I think we're at the precipice of a pretty big evolution in the CrossFit gym space, where a lot of people who have done well are going to either start to create those 3, 4, 5 location kind of local, like dominate local markets and just crush their own brands and do that whole deal. I think some will turn into variations on the model and be franchises and start to go in that direction as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation happening in the space. And but then there's going to be a lot of people who just have built one killer location. That cash flow is great. It's an awesome lifestyle business. They love what they do, but they start to look at these other things and these other options as something, well, maybe I'll go down this way, maybe I'll go down that way, when really it's not necessarily the best fit for what they actually want their day-to-day to look like, just because they think, I've been doing this for a while, I need to level up, I need to change things up. What do you say to that guy?
Yeah, I think I always tell entrepreneurs to give reasonable consideration to feedback as well as to the case studies that are happening around them. But don't think that that's what you have to do. I was at the XPT experience with Laird and the crew in Kauai in December, and I kind of sat down with every participant there to get their take on what they thought about the experience, and everybody said it was the most amazing thing they'd ever been through. And one of the participants asked me if she could kind of talk business for a little bit, and she is I would say, kind of late 40s female entrepreneur from San Francisco that runs kind of a tech consulting business and is very successful. And she's been hearing everybody around her is telling her, oh, you should raise money, you should build this thing, you should build this thing, you should raise money, do this. So she's giving more than reasonable consideration to it. I mean, frankly, I think she's giving unreasonable consideration to it, to where she thought that, all right, I got to do this. Everybody's telling me I should do this. And we sat down, and I think in 5 minutes, I convinced her not to. And I asked her, I said, what's the business doing right now? And she's like, about $5 million in revenue. I said, okay, you own 100% of this business, and it's doing $5 million in revenue? She was like, yeah. And I said, and I imagine you're netting $500,000, $1 million a year, and maybe you're netting $1 million and you're reinvesting half of it back into the company, so you're putting $500,000 in your pocket. And you answered a nobody. And she was like, yeah. And I said, then why in the hell would you raise money? You know, like you're going to raise all this capital and build a company and scale it out to make probably less than what you're making right now.
And have a boss.
And have a boss. And if you, and again, it comes down to, do you think that's a scalable business? Is what you're doing so unique and compelling and scalable that it warrants rocket ship fuel? Like, do you think that you should actually raise $20 million and build a global tech consulting firm and then compete with Accenture and everybody else? Like, keep it local, keep it small, keep it intimate, focus on your relationships, and keep clipping your cash and living your lifestyle. Like, you're here at the XBT experience in Kauai for 5 days. 90+% of professionals out there can't take that time off to do that, and you can. So, you know, I think, you know, with a gym owner, you know, people are telling you should do this, you should do that. Listen to it for sure. Give reasonable consideration to it, but it doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. And it's, you know, if you're happy with your situation now, you know, try to stay happy with it. Always be innovative. Always be progressive. Always try and stay ahead of the curve. That doesn't mean raising money, diluting yourself, bringing complexity into your life. You know, I think Da Vinci said the simplicity is the highest form of sophistication, right? So you more money, more problems, man. It's like everybody. It's so true. I don't care how trite it is. It's absolutely true. The more money you raise, the bigger your nut gets, and the more complex your life gets. So if you have 1 location, 3 locations, you own a market, make sure that you think that your platform is something that the whole world needs to be a part of, and that you can't live without that being the case. And if you can't live without that being the case, then make shit happen. Put your hand out, start begging for change, because that's what raising money is. There's no shame in it, no pride in it, and it just is part of the game. Do it. But you know, if you're stoked about your situation, if you think that you have your unique and compelling position is that you have a particular advantage in your market, just, you know, keep owning that and let it happen organically. You know, it's going to happen to where things are bursting at the seams. I mean, you know, there's a lot of really interesting guys out there, and some I've just heard of and haven't met. You know, I've heard great things about Kenny Kane and some of these other guys. I have met CJ at Invictus. You know, Invictus is one of those platforms. I mean, they have like 3 locations in San Diego, but they have a global audience. So do I think that CJ could do spectacular things? I mean, he's already doing spectacular things. Do I think that he could do grand scale things with Invictus? Absolutely. Does he want to? Who knows? I mean, he's probably smarter than all of us sitting here. So that, you know, he knows what he's doing, and he's going to figure it out. And his thing might be continuing to do what he does, and he's doing it better than anybody else I've seen. Or he might decide that he wants 500 of them around the planet. And, you know, frankly, I think my partner and I would be happy to support him to do that. So.
So say you did want $1 million. Where do you go? How do you come by that money? And what's that process of negotiation like, so to speak?
Yeah. So I would say my secret it's not a secret, but the core component that I leverage in raising money is developing champions. And let's say you need to raise $1 million. First of all, however you think you're going to raise it is probably not true. Like you might think you're going to get 4 guys to write $250,000 checks. Probably not true. You're probably going to end up getting, you know, lots of $5,000 and $10,000 checks. You're going to get, you know, most of your checks will be $25,000 to $50,000. That's what most angel investors do. That's what most successful professionals have the availability to scratch. You know, if somebody's a smart professional, they're probably not writing more than $100,000 check in your $1 million round in a business like that, you know, in kind of a modest scale business, unless they're, you know, an institutional investor and they have the ability to write $100,000 checks in a single fund, and they can really spread things out. So I think develop champions, and that is, while you might have 42 investors that make up your $1 million, you're really going to have 4 that accounted for all that. So you're going to get, I'm going to get you, and you, and I know that you guys are close to me, and you love what I'm doing, and you're really investing in me more than the concept, and so you're each willing to you've all indicated that you want to put $50,000 into the company, but I'm trying to raise $1 million. But you know 4 guys that you think would really be interested in. You know 6, and you know 2. And you already sort of talked to them about it, and they indicated that they'd like to participate, right? So now I just added 12 investors to the mix in addition to my 3. So now I got 15 investors, and now I'm pretty close to my target, right? I'm at like 3/4 of the way. So that's how I like to do it. I think you focus on the 2, 3, or 4 that are going to be your champions, your ambassadors. If you can, kick them off a little bit. Create a pool, a kind of equity pool. Every business should have an equity pool, an incentive pool on the side anyway, for your team members, for your advisors, etc. If you're a single location thing, you should probably have. If you're a single location GM, you should probably have a 5% pool. Make sure that your GM feels like he or she is an owner, that your fitness director, your assistant GM, etc., they're incentivized to stay with you for the long term. If you're a chain that's scaling, 10% is the minimum. Usually startups, as a venture capitalist, we usually require that a company has a 15 to 20% option pool in place at the time once we put our investment in. So that kind of, it's dilutive to the founders as well. And that's something that we have to really explain to these entrepreneurs is, we're not only going to invest X amount for 20% of your company, you also have to put a 10 to 20% incentive pool in place for current and future employees. And so really they went from owning 100% of their business to 60 to 70% of their business. But that's how it works. I mean, if you want to have a scalable, sustainable platform that's going to endure and succeed over the next 10 plus years, you need to incentivize your team and you need to have those things in place. But so, back on, your champions, I do the same for the champions. You don't have, some of them won't ask for it. And if they don't ask for it, offer it up. And a lot of the great ones will turn it down and say, no, I'm just happy to help you. Those are the best investors to have, the ones that aren't always asking for a little bit extra. But develop your 3-4 champions, get them to create a network for you and bring other people in. I mean, that's essentially kind of organic crowdfunding. I also think crowdfunding is a great way to do it as well. Like if you have, again, like not to come back to like CJ and Invictus, everybody in San Diego knows that brand. He could start a crowdfunding campaign to raise $1 million. I have no doubt about it. And just digitally. So, and it's amazing how limited, I mean, it's practically non-existent, the diligences that those investors do, which, is good and bad. I mean, it's great from speed of execution. It's bad in that I don't really like the idea of anybody putting money into anything without doing proper research on it and getting comfortable from kind of via a professional, path to investing. But, crowdfunding is a great thing. It's a great thing. So I think that's something that every modest scale business out there should consider. Leverage your local market, leverage the people that know you, that have heard of you, that are driving by your gym every day, that are members of your gym. Give your members an opportunity to raise capital. There's nothing wrong with offering up the ability for your members to invest in your gym. If they love your gym and they're sticking around, there's nothing illegal about it as far as I'm concerned. Talk to your counsel, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that those are probably the best ambassadors. Look, Mark Mastrov was a personal trainer at the location that he worked at and bought into it and turned it into a $2 billion company. So, look at the people closest to you and do not be afraid to ask for money. Having said that, I was told a while ago, ask for money and get advice, ask for advice and get money. So I do think that, there are times when you just flat out say, hey, we're raising money. Here's the opportunity. Are you interested? Let's do this. And there are other times, particularly I think with the kind of higher level, more strategic individuals, some of the top entrepreneurs and executives, I like to go to them first for advice, for feedback. Let them know what I'm working on, and just say, hey, value your feedback. That's all I'm asking for here. If they don't come back and say, hey, I'd also like to potentially, they were never going to say yes in the first place. So I like to ask for feedback, and it doesn't often, but I'd say 5-ish% of the time it turns into money, and also you're going to have to, if you really want to raise real money for a business, you have to get comfortable with the fact you're going to have to pitch over 100 people.
Nice.
Yeah. That's something I don't think most people expect. They think they're going to talk 2 or 3 people and it'll be done soon. And
expect rejection.
100 people sounds like a lot.
Expect rejection. I mean, you just get comfortable with it. Don't even think of it as rejection, and don't get mad about it and go, oh, they don't get my vision. They're just, those people don't know what they know what they're talking about. But it's not a matter of that. It's that person that comes in and backs you there's no support like financial support, and that person that comes in and provides you that financial support has to understand what you're doing without you giving them much explanation. If you have to twist their arm to get them to understand it, they're not going to put money in. You're never going to talk somebody into investing. You're only going to present them the opportunity, and then they're going to come after it. That's pretty much how it goes. But people also need to understand that there's everybody has personal circumstances. Like, my partner and I in raising our venture capital fund, we had people, big time sports team owners and this and that were going to be putting in a check this large, a huge check. And then all of a sudden they got slapped with a divorce, and they're either not investing anymore or their check was cut by 90%. And I mean, that is the case for 2 or 3 of the investors in our fund. I mean, in the last, 6 months, like divorce, family issues. I mean, my father was in the hospital in December. That took me offline for 3 weeks. So I was not doing deals or closing anything. And if I was going to invest in anything at that time, it didn't happen. So understand that as well when you talk to people. Just don't take things personally. Just get out there, be an entrepreneur, be a little cavalier, get wild and ask people, ask for feedback. And then when the opportunity presents itself, ask them for money.
Yeah, just like you were saying, you're going to pitch 100 people. We were talking earlier about the volume game in regard to leasing a building or finding a space.
Yeah.
I think a common mistake people make is they see 1 or 2 buildings and then they go, well, that's it, and then they get excited and then just pull the trigger, and then a year down the road they're in a bad relationship with a landlord and nobody's having fun.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with that process?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, shout out to Adam Sedlak, president of UFC Gym. I learned probably everything I understand about opening gyms, kind of specific corporate-owned stores from him, and sitting side by side with him, modeling out gym forecasts, to the most minute detail. And reviewing leases and negotiating leases and doing all that. Adam always said 1 out of 20. So he would have 20 locations, high probability locations listed on his whiteboard, and he'd point at it and say, we'll only end up doing 1 of those. That's how it works out statistically. So it's very hard to not fall in love with the first location you see, because maybe it was well advertised. It's, in a place that you drive by all the time. It's right by your house, whatever it may be. Do not fall in love with it, because there's usually hair on it if that's the case. I've never seen that happen, where an operator came across the first location they saw, locked it down, got good terms, and everything worked out. The best gym operators in the world still make that mistake from time to time and end up failing. And that gets worse and worse as you scale. Once you have 10 gyms, you're not going to have 10 successful gyms. Like that 4 or 5 location gym turns into 10, 2 of them are going to suck. Just the way it goes. And those 2 might have been good at one point in time, but they will ultimately suck. Brands get tired after about 4 or 5 years in a market. So it's something, you got to always be refreshing your gym and reinvesting in your gym, et cetera. But, so I mean, just considering that, like, it comes back, make sure you're getting good leases. And so survey the landscape, take a look at 20 of them that actually fit your model, right size, parking, signage, cost per square foot in your range at least, and then go from there. And unless there's some other catch, something that you've got in place that's covering you from a financial perspective, do not sign up to lease a lease cost that is not prudent. I mean, the most successful gyms I've come across have cost per square foot less than $2. So that's really hard to do if you're in highly visible retail, kind of shopping mall or kind of mini mall like type area. That's usually $4 or $5 a square foot. I see jiu-jitsu gyms do that a lot, but a jiu-jitsu gym costs $60,000 to build out, and you can put 250 members in there paying you $200 a month. So it's kind of a different scenario. There's no equipment or anything. But a gym with equipment that's CapEx intensive, and all that. I mean, be prudent about it. If you have a municipal grant because you're doing like an after school program for inner city youths or something like that, and it's covering half of your nut on the rent cost, different scenario. Then you can be more bold. You can have something that's a little more in your face, and you can probably afford $4 to $5 a square foot. Just make sure that grant you're getting or whatever kind of financial support you're getting is like matched up with the terms of the lease, because you might get that for 18 months, and then for the last 3.5 years of the lease, it's all on you. So yeah, survey the landscape, look at a lot, make sure the deals are on your terms. Make sure that you're getting the right cost. Make sure that the landlord's kicking you back some money, that the shell's built out the right way, and I say it every day to people. Be careful about personal guarantees. Sometimes you have no choice. Okay? Sometimes you have to do it. Frankly, I would not. But if you have one in place already, you can still get out of it. You can go raise more money into your business and go back to your landlord and say, look, I'm buying a house. I need to get this personal guarantee released. In place of that, I'm willing to offer a structured deposit. I put $500,000 in the build out of my gym, so I'm willing to post 50% of that cost into a deposit. So I'm going to put up a $250,000 deposit. Half of it's going to go into a rent deposit that burns off over the next 24 months, and the other half goes into a security deposit that stays there till the end of the lease. But I'd rather do that than be on the hook for a 5-year lease in my name. So those are things that you can do at the outset, and try and get those in place. But even if you already provided a personal guarantee, that you can always restructure a lease. Leases get restructured all the time. Having said that, if your gym's killing it, then don't worry about it. Like you're probably fine.
Well, what about the gym who's has the personal guarantee in place and they're not doing so hot? And what can happen if that takes a shit?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a really bad scenario. And not to again, I don't want to discourage anybody out there, but I've seen it happen. It's happened to people in my family where leases were personally guaranteed and things didn't end up working out. They were working out at one point in time, but because of something with the business or a market dynamic, things changed, and next thing you know, this individual was on the hook personally for the entirety of the lease. And you think that these landlords, another thing, make sure you're working with a friendly landlord. Even if you got the terms that you kind of want, if you got the terms you want, you're probably working with a friendly landlord. But, most landlords are not friendly. Most of them, this is what they do for a living. Most of them have a legal team ready to go for when that happens, when you don't pay rent or when you default in some manner, and they take action on it. So a personal guarantee can drive you into bankruptcy. That's what it's intended to do. It's intended to ensure that you perform so that you don't have to, so to keep you afraid of that scenario, so you do whatever it takes to pay that rent. Look, we don't, it's, you wouldn't sign a 5-year lease on your apartment and PG it. The only scenario in which you would do that is because you have another job where you make $100,000+ a year and you have certainty of income over the period of that lease. But that's why we sign annual leases. I don't know anybody that's signing a 5-year residential lease for where they live. Your business, you got to sign a 5+ year lease, and you have so many more dynamics and so much more complexity that goes into covering the nut for that lease. So be wary of PGs. Be wary of a landlord that won't work around a personal guarantee. Like, if you go to a landlord and say, look, we're doing a 7,500 square foot location and it's going to be loud and we're going to do all this awesome design. We're putting $1 million into the build out. I'll post a $500,000 deposit and he or she won't take that over a personal guarantee, you don't work with that landlord. Like, it's all about money at the end of the day. It's not about the personal guarantee. It's about getting paid. And if you're providing enough coverage in a deposit to cover them for half of that lease term, I think that's crazy for them to say no to that. So we're going through that right now on something, on a concept we're building out, and we didn't have to do a personal guarantee because we're posting a deposit. So I tell you, you don't have to have. There are a lot of raising money gets around financials. So if you can go out and raise money, get enough money to capitalize the entity, post a deposit. Sucks to have to tie that money up, but trust me, it's better than a personal guarantee. So,
excellent, great advice.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Should people be? Are you hiding, or can people find you? Do you want to be found?
Yeah,
Are you famous on Instagram or anything like that?
Should we tell them your real name?
I try to stay pretty under the radar. I'm actually not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I do have Twitter. My handle is FitnessVC. It's a pretty obvious one. So I don't think I put much original content out there. I prefer to kind of mooch off the experts in my network and filter and curate the amazing stuff they're putting out, as opposed to touting my own beliefs. So even kind of what you heard today really is a filtering of everything I've learned from all the great people around me over the last several years. And but yeah, if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to hit me on Twitter. I'll respond if you guys have any questions about business issues that you're facing. And my partner Brian Kirkbride is on there as well. He was a top guy at Nike, and he and I are hand in hand in all this, and he brings a completely different perspective as well. And we're here to help entrepreneurs in this industry. This is what we live to do now, and we love it.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.